Hello, friends. My name is Kent C. Dodds, and with me is my friend Ian Sutherland. Say hi, Ian.
Hi, Ian.
There, you
I
did
got I got it right this
it.
time.
Brilliant. So I'm excited to be joined by Ian again. If you did not hear Ian's first episode, we talked about just getting into things. We talked a lot about open source. It was very good. That's where Ian introduced himself. So please go listen to that. But we're just going to jump into this one. Ian works on Create React App, and so lots of experience in building tools. And I think a lot of us sometimes see tool building as the responsibility of companies that have developers as customers or open source projects or something. And that definitely is, I mean, that is an example of tool builders. But I think that we can all be tool builders. And Ian has a lot of thoughts on that. So anyway, Ian, what are your thoughts around developer experience and tool building just in general? Like, why do you think that it's an important thing for developers to keep in mind?
Yeah, I think so. Sort of as you mentioned, I think people. I guess first of all, for people that might not know, DX stands for developer experience, um, and I think people tend to think of that a lot in terms of a company has like a SaaS product for developers. They need to care about DX or an SDK or something for developers. That's DX. But I think you should also consider DX, even just within your own team or your own company. Everything that your developers do every day is DX. How hard is it to pull down all of your company's code and get it all built and running locally? That's part of DX.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the tools and processes around submitting PRs and other things like that? That all of that is DX, and I think by putting some thought and effort into those things and finding parts in that process that are maybe a little bit more difficult than they should be, there's great opportunity to build tools and automate things and really unlock developer productivity there.
I think about setting up the repo in the first place, and all I can think of is when I first started a company, how painful it is. Like every single time, it's always just a huge pain, and nobody else thinks that it's a big pain except for me, who's just
Mhm.
getting started, because they've all just gotten used to it. And so that kind of leads me to this question of like, when is it a good time to start investing in DX? Are there bad times? Should we just always spend our time investing in DX, or when is an appropriate time to do that?
Yeah, I mean that's a great question. I don't know. I don't know if there's bad times. There are maybe better times. I think if it's just yourself. I mean, you probably still care about your own time and not doing tedious, boring tasks. So, spending a little bit of time on it there maybe makes sense. But I think definitely as a company grows, it becomes more and more important as your team grows, especially if you're onboarding a lot of new people. Like a good DX experience can make the onboarding process much, much smoother. So I think that's somewhere where it's very valuable. Um, but yeah, I would say there's always things and processes that could be better or more streamlined. So there probably is no bad time to invest in those things. It's kind of like the rule of like automating something too, right? If you find yourself spending a lot of time doing the same repetitive tasks over and over again, it's probably worth automating it, and it's gonna save you some time and make you happier.
Yeah, I totally agree. So like, generators were a big thing. Like project generators used
Hmm.
to be a lot bigger, and then Create React App kind of came around, and then we're like, oh, I guess I don't need these boilerplate projects for React anyway.
Right.
But when generators were a big thing, I had people ask me why I didn't use generators, and my answer, I actually answered this in my 3 minute podcast, 3 minutes with Kent. Um, but my answer is basically, I don't use a generator that I didn't make myself, but I absolutely recommend using a generator. And
Right.
I've had a generator for my open source projects. This is why all of my recent open source projects look almost identical, is because they're all generated from the same thing. And it just saves me enormous amounts of time. And not only does it save you time, but it actually enables you to do more. You're more likely to do it if it doesn't take as much time. And so like I don't think that I would have open sourced as much or done as much in that world if it meant that I had to spend 20 minutes getting things set up before I could actually start writing the code.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I found myself making a lot of TypeScript CLI tools maybe last year. And so, yeah, I built just like a Yeoman generator that does that for me. It's just like a basic project with TypeScript and yargs for argument parsing, a couple other, little ESLint and things like that already set up. And yeah, it makes it so much easier to just, I want to build a CLI that does one little thing, and you just run the generator and off you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there's the XKCD about the like it's this big chart of how much time you spend automating a task versus how much time you spend saved because of that task
Yeah.
automated. And what's missed in that conversation is the fact that if it's automated, you're more likely to do it.
Right.
And so you end up doing much more. And so it absolutely is worth investing a little time in a Yeoman generator. That's what mine is. It uses
Hmm.
Yeoman, tried and true. It's been around
Yeah.
for like as long as I've been in Node. We've had well, almost we've
Yeah.
had Yeoman. And yeah, so having these little project generators just to get you going. In fact, there was somebody in my Discord community who shared this VS Code extension that he made that like spins up a really quick project so he can play around with stuff. And you're just more likely
Hmm.
to do that stuff if it's easy.
Yeah, exactly. And also if you're working on a team of people as well, um, not everyone is as into building tools or is into understanding all of the little nuances that go into that. So having something that can get them started right away, yeah, is a big help.
Yeah, and what's also interesting is when you have this and this applies to any code that you end up sharing, whether it's tools or an abstraction or something, when it's built into what you're doing. So you have all these like little scripts or something, or functions or whatever, or maybe it's just a list of steps to go through. You're just gonna like basically do the bare minimum for what
Hmm.
you're doing. But when you decide to either automate it or abstract it or make it special, you're actually going to put more effort into making that experience better. And
Well, and
so, yeah,
you start to get the benefit of like incremental improvement and stuff there too,
yeah,
right? The generator now is a repo in your GitHub org, and people can
hmm
start to improve that and add incremental improvements to that. So, yeah, I agree. You're going to end up with a much better result. And likewise, like something that I've done is taken a bunch of those little scripts that are lying around to automate various tasks, and roll them up into a CLI.
hmm
It's fairly easy with Node, to make a CLI tool. I'm personally a big fan of the command line.
hmm
I like those kinds of tools. I know they're not for everyone, um, but yeah, if you have something like various like deploy and test scripts and stuff like that, just package them up into a CLI that you can share with your team.
absolutely. And I think that when with that incremental improvement, especially like when we're talking about stuff like create React app, or I have my the React scripts package, and I have the KCD scripts package.
Mhm.
I've been able to make some pretty hefty improvements, and I've seen React scripts does the same, like upgrades Webpack, and all everybody else has to do is update like the minor version in their package JSON, and all of a sudden everything is like way faster, it's way better, like bundles better, whatever it is. And it's just an enormous improvement. When I was at PayPal, I also made PayPal scripts. And all of a sudden, anybody who used PayPal scripts, they would get TypeScript support and they'd get auto formatting with Prettier. They like all of this stuff. And they don't have to manage the like 30 or maybe 200 dependencies in the package
Right.
JSON. It's just the one. And it just makes management of these processes even better as well.
Well, I actually remember when you were working at PayPal and you talking about that, and that was one of the things that sort of got me thinking along these lines as well. That's another great example. It's really easy to build and publish an npm package,
Hmm
so you can take, yeah, some common, if there's common libraries and stuff like that that you're using in all of your services, just bundle them up into a custom package like that, and then install that into all of your projects. And then, like you said, it becomes very easy. You just bump that version number to upgrade everything.
Yeah, just so much easier to manage over time. There are also tools that I've worked on that are not like CLI tools, but like in browser dev tools.
Mhm.
So one pretty early in my career, I decided it'd be really nice if I could see some information about the current build, or be able to change what feature switches were on, or what language was showing up, or various different things. And so I created in-browser dev tools that would only render during development. I have a blog post about this, but and at other companies, I've seen people make like Chrome extensions or
Mhm.
stuff like that too. That's an enormous improvement for productivity, and that's the sort of thing that can be shared with the team as well.
That's definitely something I've done in the past as well. Is yeah, build a couple simple Chrome extensions. Um, I think at the time that was around logging into our app with various test sessions. So I just made an extension that sort of made that a one-click process. Um, yeah, Chrome extensions are a great option. Even building simple web apps and dashboards. That's something like that I've used Create React app for at work. Is just throwing up like a basic like status page or dashboard of some kind.
Mm,
Um, there's also, Slack bots, and all kinds of things like that these days, like various bots. GitHub Actions is another big one.
mm.
I've built a few custom GitHub Actions to automate some tasks there. There's really endless possibilities these days, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And early on in my career as well, I remember. So you mentioned having an extension where you click into log into different test users and stuff, and
Mhm.
I've had I never built an extension like that, but we had one at some of the companies I've worked at. Super helpful. If you don't have something like that, I recommend it. But at one of the companies that I worked for, I also used the Chrome DevTools snippets, and so it's just like little JavaScript files in the DevTools that you can save. Um, and with those snippets, you just write arbitrary JavaScript and you hit execute, and it's like you wrote it in the console. And so, if I had something that I was doing over and over again in my UI, then I would build this little snippet in there and I'd execute it, and then it could automate doing a whole bunch of stuff in the UI, like click on this button, then open this modal, then click on this and that and whatever. And now you can even use React testing library or DOM testing library to query things easier. But yeah, so if you have a repetitive task, even within, but it doesn't even have to be your app. It can be somebody else's app.
Right.
Um, but
I was
one
going to
thing
say
that I
that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, finish that. One thing that I would do is once I had a snippet, if I found myself doing it a lot, then I would actually save this into the project in a git ignored file, and then I would dynamically require that. So I'd say if this file exists, then require it, and it'll just execute. So then I'd have like a event listener on the history, and so when I land on this page, let's execute this script, and it would do all this stuff. It was really cool, and it saved me a ton of time in developing the software.
I haven't actually played around with that functionality. I should check that out. I was going to say that sounds kind of like, I mean, you're basically building like Cypress or or
Yeah,
Playwright or something, an early version of that.
yeah, it kind of was a little bit, and actually, I've never actually done this actively, but on testingjavascript.com, I show how to use Cypress as I call it Cypress driven development, where you have Cypress script your way to the the part of the UI that you're working on. So there was one company I worked for where you had to um, click on this button and then click add and then click this other thing, and then this modal would pop up. You'd fill out this form with like 40 fields and then hit save. And my bug that I was fixing was what happens after you click save. And so I'd have to do that every single time. And so this is one of the situations where I made that little script that I just hit go, and it gets me into that state, because I never trust hot module replacement anyway. I
Yeah,
maybe I should become more trusting.
it's definitely not perfect.
Yeah, yeah. So I always refresh, and so yeah, having just a little script that you can run that says, "Okay, get me from here to here." But yeah, you could do the same thing with Cypress, and because it really is Chrome. Like you can pull
Mhm.
up the dev tools, you have React dev tools installed, everything. then you can script your way with Cypress to get into that state. Every single time you hit save, Cypress reruns it. It gets you there in like 2 seconds, and you keep on moving. That's
That's
a huge productivity gain when you're
yeah,
working on something like that.
that's a really great idea. Yeah.
Well, cool. So, other ideas of tools or tips that you have for the sorts of developer experience enhancements that you do at work?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so I already mentioned, if you have those little scripts and stuff lying around, package them up into a CLI and distribute that to your team. Um, Something actually that we're exploring now is actually building like an Electron desktop app that's
Hmm.
sort of an enhanced version of that CLI. Like I
Mm.
mentioned too, like not everyone's as comfortable with the command line. I personally am, but that's not necessarily the way everyone likes to work. Plus, the browser is obviously a richer environment for displaying and interacting with things. So yeah, that's something that we're exploring is building a custom like Electron desktop app that we can distribute to the team. The great thing about that too, you've probably seen in many Electron apps, is the auto update functionality. So if you
Hmm.
push out a new version of these tools, people are automatically going to get a pop up that says, "Hey, there's a new version." Click and restart. Um, so it has a great like sort of built-in distribution mechanism.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's one that I'm kind of excited to start working on. But yeah, like I said, there really are endless possibilities. Like GitHub Actions is another really exciting one. Um, we've My company has open sourced a few GitHub Actions. I personally have open sourced a few GitHub Actions. It's a really great way to automate um, various like checks and things like that happen as part of your process. Um, yeah, there's so many possibilities these days, and JavaScript I think is sort of at the core of a lot of these, even like building a Chrome extension, like you were talking
Hmm.
about. Um, it's actually, I remember the first time that I went to build a Chrome extension, it is actually quite easy. Like Chrome has like a really nice, they have good docs, and it's a nice SDK for here's how you build your preferences page, and here's how you interact with the active tab and whatever. I mean, it's been a while. I'm probably a little out of date there, but
Yeah.
um, and then at the end of the day, it's just all JavaScript. Um, and same with like I think working on Create React app really um, sort of opened my eyes up to that. Oh wow, you can really build like a pretty nice CLI tool just with JavaScript. Um, and so I've just been doing more and more of that. I even I made my own wrapper around Yarn a little while
Really?
ago. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Um, it so Yarn 2 came out and it had this feature where if you install if you're in a TypeScript project and and I use TypeScript for pretty much everything these days.
Hmm.
So if you're in a TypeScript project and you add a package, it will automatically install the types package that goes along with it if it exists.
Oh, that's great.
And yeah, so I thought, oh wow, I use Yarn 1. I really want that. Um, so I made my own CLI. It's called Blarn. You can find it on GitHub. Um, but so I basically just made a wrapper that adds that functionality to the add command, and all other commands it just passes straight through to the underlying yarn. And then since then, I've added a couple other. Every once in a while, I'll find a feature like, oh, I really wish Yarn did this, and so I just add it in there.
That's awesome. And actually, that makes me think of like people might be interested to know how React scripts works and KCD scripts, PayPal scripts. They all actually work the same way. I got inspired by React scripts. Do you want to describe? And I'm guessing this is how lots of automation tools work, or at least that's how I would do lots of my automation tools. It's this
Mhm.
way. Do you want to describe exactly how does React scripts work? Does it re-implement Jest and re-implement Webpack, and
Right.
it's just it's all I'm using is React scripts, or how does that work with the underlying tools?
Yeah, it actually just has dependencies on the underlying tools. It's kind of another way to think of it is sort of as like a meta package. It's a package that requires other packages.
Mm.
So if you dig into React scripts, you'll see that it actually just requires a bunch of things like Jest and Webpack and Babel and things like that. Um, and then it exposes a few scripts like start and build and things like that your project can sort of trigger to yeah, trigger a build, run the dev server, things like that. Um, and then just exposes those via the bin links, which is a thing that a node package can expose. So that's why in your project, all you see is React scripts start, um, which kind of triggers React scripts to run the script that's pointed to by start. I don't know. It's not a very good explanation, but it's
Yeah.
basically that's basically all it is. And then also inside there is just a folder of our various configs, like our Webpack config and our Jest config and stuff like that. And that's really all that it is those configs and a few scripts.
Yeah, it actually, I would encourage people to go and take a look because it's not that complicated. I
Mhm.
remember when I was I was thinking, oh man, React scripts, that's so nice. It would be nice if I had something like that at PayPal. Oh, wait, I guess I can. And I just went
Mhm.
and looked at how React scripts works and like, oh, wow. So like it ends up, uh, React scripts doesn't handle, or it doesn't have a lint script or a format script or different things like that. That's kind of outside of the scope.
Mhm.
But I decided I wanted to have that, and really, you just like take the arguments. You have a couple of defaults, and you forward those on. You just say spawn process, and you
Mhm.
spawn it onto this other child process, and it ends up um, actually being pretty nice. Like let's say that you're using this CLI, and every single time you use it, you are passing this additional parameter.
Mhm.
Well, you just make a little script that encapsulates that and forwards on that default parameter every time, and now you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It can be a great way too. That kind of like meta package pattern can be a great way of distributing shared configs and things like that.
Hmm.
You do have to be careful because it then makes it harder if you need to customize those configs in any of your
Mm.
projects. But you can expose that in certain ways as well to allow for that. But yeah, it's a great way to distribute those kinds of shared tools. I mean, that's
Mm.
another great part of like the JavaScript ecosystem, right? Is npm and being able to easily publish and consume all of these different modules, whether they're from third parties or whether they're ones you've built internally for your team.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the note of config,
Hmm.
React script doesn't really allow you to configure too much, but
Right.
I needed that for PayPal scripts. And what I decided to do was before I tell Babel to use the built-in config that I have, the first thing I do is check if the project has a Babel config, and if it does, then I just say use the built-in one. But then, because there's value in the config that I've created, I make it so that people can extend my config that I created, and
Hmm.
so then they can override different things. They can make changes to it. But I'm still just saying, hey, Babel, you use the built-in or their config, and then they can just in their config they're extending mine, and so you kind of get the best of both worlds. If you don't need to extend it, then you don't even need to bother with a config. But if you decide you want to extend or you want to customize it, then you can just extend the built-in one. It makes it really quite easy, relatively to make all of that shared config actually be valuable.
Right. And yeah, if you're building, for a production setting and a work setting, that is probably more appropriate.
Hmm.
Whereas in Create React App, yeah, we're kind of more focused on um, hiding that stuff away from people who are new to React, or in some cases even new to software development. So we try not to to give them too many options.
Yeah, you know what? And as somebody who's had to work around that decision a lot, I still think it's the right move. I think it's a good decision to just lock that down. And I only say I've had to work around it a lot because I always do weird things. I'm always the one like taking the tool in a direction it wasn't supposed to go.
Well, and we've
Um,
we've at least tried to make that possible by allowing you to specify your own scripts, like your own instead of
mm.
React scripts, you can specify your own version. So yeah, we at least try and leave that escape hatch there for people like you that want to want to mess around and break things.
Yeah, yeah. I really want to stick with React scripts as the package, but maybe I should just fork it a little bit and make a couple of modifications so I don't have to work around quite as much. It ends up working out okay. And it, like I said, it's just been enormously helpful to me. So, um, okay, cool. So I did want to add or talk about a word of caution on like maybe we could spend so much time on DX that we forget about UX. So where's the balance here on like is there ever a time where it's appropriate to make the user pay a cost because we wanted a better development experience, or where's the line there?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I would say probably not. It I'm sure like most things, it depends. It depends on what your product is and on what
Mm,
your who your users and your consumers are. Um, but yeah, I would say in general, no, you probably shouldn't be sacrificing um, your user experience in exchange for a better developer experience. Um, Usually, as developers, we're the ones that have to pay the price sometimes, so that the end users have the better experience. And yeah, you can't always automate your way out of that or get away from that. Um, and yeah, I don't think you should if it comes at the expense of the user experience.
yeah, so I kind of see this sort of automation or developer experience thing is like, the reason that we do this is so that we can be more productive to serve the user better, right?
Right.
That's the ultimate goal, is to, whatever the mission of the company is, so long as it's a good mission, um, the purpose of everything that you do is to drive that mission forward. And DX is important because it allows you to accomplish that mission faster most of the time. That's normally what you're going for. Is there any other reason to, other than like improve developer productivity, to have these tools?
I mean, I really think that's the main reason. I mean, you can also use them for kind of fun sometimes too. There's nothing wrong with making a silly Slack bot or
Mm,
one of the things we do is we have a couple different leaderboards. So our Slack bot on Friday, for example, will post the leaderboard of um, who reviewed the most PRs, who merged the most PRs. And that's kind of like a fun competition among the developers. Like, we don't take it too seriously. It's not
mm.
like that doesn't factor into your, performance evaluation or anything like that.
Good
It's
call.
it's just for fun. Or we have a leaderboard of code coverage in various services. So everyone's, always trying to get their service into the top. Or
Mm.
we kind of have the inverse of that, which is like the slow query leaderboard. You don't want your team service to appear on that one.
That's funny.
But yeah, little things like that. They kind of make it fun, make it a little bit of a challenge. Gamify things a little bit, give people a reason to put in a little extra effort, maybe to claim that first place on the leaderboard or whatever, just for bragging rights, really.
Yeah, sure. Well, and it is fun, and there's also, I can't remember where I think it was Boyd K. Packer said, when performance is measured, performance improves. When performance is measured and recorded or reported, the rate of improvement accelerates. Something like that. And
Right,
so when you have those sorts of reports or things, it makes you think about those things more. So like if you
right.
say, hey, like we're kind of struggling making sure that our we have everybody reviewing the code that's supposed to be like, sometimes people just go rogue and commit straight to master or something like that, then
Mhm.
having some way to report that, record it, will just get it on people's minds more, and they'll it'll direct their behavior in the where you want it to go.
Right. And there's also the flip side of that too, right? You can game some of those things like, oh, I'm just going to make 100 tiny PRs and then I'll win.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, you're really just competing against your peers,
Yeah.
and probably they're going to notice that,
Yeah.
and you're going to get called out for it. So,
Yeah, and I think that you can get that performance improvement, even when it isn't directly tied to your compensation, which, as you said, like I wouldn't recommend tying something like that to compensation,
yeah,
because then it will be gamed.
exactly. I think that's where those things kind of start to fall apart. So if they're more just kind of fun metrics for bragging rights on the team or whatever, I think that stuff, in my experience, anyways, works really well. I would not use it for something beyond that.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting. It's a lot of fun. Thank you for talking with me about improving developer experience. We do have some homework for folks. So what we decided on was identify one thing you do a lot and automate a tedious part of it. And yeah, I think that would be a good thing for people to do.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to build your own tools. It's easier than it sounds, and you'll learn something.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Hey, thank you, Ian. We'll have you repeat really quick. How do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, probably the best way to find me is on Twitter at Ian Su, IANSU. Just send me a message.
Awesome. And I'm sure that if somebody built some fun tool or some productive tool, you'd love to hear about it on
Absolutely.
Twitter. It'd be fun. Yeah. And mention me too. Cool. Well, it's been a pleasure to chat with you, Ian. And thanks everybody for listening, giving us some of your time. And you all take care. We'll see you later.
Bye.